In the 41st millennium, mankind has expanded into an intergalactic empire that spans countless numbers of worlds. But the universe is an unforgiving and hostile environment, and the Imperium of mankind finds itself besieged on all sides by hostile alien forces. Some scheme and are vengeful. Others are a force of nature that simply cannot be reasoned with. Even internally, it struggles to keep peace, as opposing sub-factions vie for control and power. And beyond the material, within the ethereal and the immaterial that is used to traverse the stars, further enemies lurk. Manifestations of sentient emotion, godlike beings looking to gain ground in the great game, whilst the survivors of the long war aim to destroy those that they see as worshipping a false emperor. In the face of all this, mankind has developed into a sprawling, bureaucratic theocracy that buckles under its own weight, demanding an authoritarian devotion to the cult of the emperor in order to stand strong against insurmountable odds. In short, and to quote,
"In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war."
Hello and welcome, I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet, and welcome to the full deck reveal of Forces of the Imperium. I'm going to go through every single card. We're going to start with mana base, then we're going to go to the legendaries, then we're going to go to reprints, then we're going to go to the new hotness stuff. Oh, I'm excited. Thank you to Wizards of the Coast for giving me this free and exclusive preview. If you enjoy the video, there's links to more preview content for the Warhammer decks down below from me as well. With that out of the way, let's crack on with it. Oh, one more thing before we really get into it. If you're looking to pre-order the decks, use the code Kenobi at checkout at coolstuffinc.com to get 5% off your order, and you also get an illegitimate business person token with my likeness on it too. What more could you ask for? Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about the deck. The deck, as you can tell from the face cards, is looking to go wide and create tokens, but more on that as we go. The deck contains 42 new cards and thusly 58 reprints. Every single card in the deck has brand new art for Magic the Gathering, so even reprints are themed around Warhammer 40k, and in particular, the Imperium of Man. Some of the art is reused from other Warhammer assets, including one or two pieces of truly iconic stuff that we'll come to. Quickly, let's set the scene and survey the battlefield. Let's talk about the mana base. There's 8 plains, 7 swamps, and 5 islands, all with unique Warhammer 40k art, and I have to say I absolutely adore this plains, which shows the Imperial Guardsmen of Cadia moving across an arid plain with their Leman Russ tanks. The Guard are very well represented in this deck, probably much to the surprise of your average Warhammer fan. The rest of the mana base is reprints with gorgeous artwork. Arcane Sanctum shows the Imperial Palace on Terra where the Emperor sits upon the Golden Throne, and Ash Barrens is a solid reprint for Pauper and depicts the wastelands that surround a hive city. In short, the heavy populated areas of the Imperium are cities that span continents and breach the clouds with their height. The industrialization of planets has left any area beyond the confines of the city toxic and almost inhospitable. Choked Estuary depicts a similar situation, but with flavor text building upon the idea that the galaxy-wide industrialization towards war is going to leave the environment in tatters. Command Tower is some sort of Imperial bastion. I'm not actually quite sure what planet it is, perhaps Macragge, the homeworld of the Ultramarines, as we read Manius Calgar talking about winning wars here. Darkwater Catacomb shows us the Hall of Heroes where the corpses of the Imperium's greatest warriors are preserved within the Imperial Palace, like saints of a dystopian war cult. And Dismal Backwater shows us the ruins of Astra Militarum Sentinels on the surface of Armageddon, referenced as the Orcs' #1 holiday destination for crumping. Evolving Wilds, Exotic Orchard, Path of Ancestry, and Terramorphic Expanse all appear here as well as in other decks, sharing our assets with those decks. Tyranid Infestations, the Imperial Palace's banners, the Cicatrix Maledictum, which is a huge warp rift, by the way, that tore the galaxy in two and consumes worlds, terramorphing them into hellscapes, so it's perfect art for Terramorphic Expanse. Memorial to Glory is reprinted as a shrine to Celestine here. Interestingly, it does not generate systems of battle tokens though, but instead soldier tokens, men and women of the Imperial Army who will fight for the Ecclesiarchy upon request. I'll show more of these tokens later, but this is a glimpse of what the deck looks like. Port Town gives us respite from the grim, but with an undercurrent of grimness, I guess. The Imperium's most peaceful world serve only to arm and supply the others. We continue our respite at the tranquil coves of deep spaceports. Respite, but only temporarily. Prairie Stream shows us another battle-scarred landscape, this time our first taste of dead Imperial Guardsmen floating face down in the stream. And Scoured Barrens are first of many, many deeper cuts, as a Deathcore of Krieg soldier rides his cyborg steed through a blasted hellscape with an assortment of destroyed Militarum aircraft dotted amongst it. There's so much detail here. Skycloud Expanse gives us more world building, showing us the richer upper tiers of the hive worlds where the ruling class live in metaphorical ivory towers. And lastly, we see the polar opposite with the two extremes of the Imperium civilian populace with the sunken hollows of the ruined Underhive. Now with the scene set, let's talk about the leaders of the Imperial forces, face cards and legendaries. The face card of the deck is Inquisitor Greyfax. A lot has been said about her already, so I'm not going into great detail, but I love how she powers up the token sub-theme of the deck and brings together the forces of the Imperium thematically. Inquisitors are laws unto themselves. They are judge, they are jury, and they are executioner. They have incredible levels of authority within the bureaucratic web of the Imperium, being able to co-opt and control the forces of the Navy and the Imperial Army, and often be able to call in aid from the more autonomous forces like the Space Marine chapters. The Inquisitors come from a number of different orders that specialise in hunting down and eradicating various threats of the Imperium, with Greyfax being part of the Order Hereticus, concerned with the internal threats like heresy and treason and dissent and unsanctioned psychers. That's why, in essence, she looks like a witch hunter, because she is the Witch Hunter General of the Imperium. Joining her in this great crusade is Marnius Calgar, Chapter Master and kind of leader of the Ultramarines when Guilliman is away on business. With him, he brings the full force of the Adeptus Astartes, not just the Ultras, but other chapters too. Powerful, genetically enhanced super soldier. I've spoken at great length about his background, vendettas with the Swarm Lord and Abaddon, and his mechanical abilities too. I'll link to that video in the description. The next legendary to join the front lines is Celestine the Living Saint, a saint of the Adeptus Sororitas. Celestine is an individual whose faith in the God Emperor of mankind has bestowed her with extraordinary abilities. She is beyond human now, a warp entity. In many ways, she's a good, in inverted commas, version of a demon, but that word would be heresy. She's a 5-mana human warrior with flying, lifelink, 3 power and 4 toughness. At the beginning of your end step, you return a creature with mana value X from your graveyard to play, where X is the life you gained this turn. She is famously an incredibly powerful warrior who cannot be killed for long, resurrecting and reincarnating to fight. I would have liked to have seen that iconic ability on the card somewhere, but beyond that, she does resurrect martyred sisters and servants of the Emperor to serve as her Gemini and similar in the lore. So that does fit that she can do that. Ultimately, it's a character that I really like and a super interesting mechanical space that I can't think of another card in Magic exploring. She's almost like a legendary Sun Titan in the sense that her lifelink enables the returning of 3-drops without any extra help, and it gets better from there if you gain more life. She's very cool, and I can actually see myself building this. We have our Imperial Guard Commissar and the fan favourite Severina Rain. I am not deeply familiar with her except for the fact that she is a character from an extended canon novel, and she got a model in recent years as a celebration of the Black Library. A 3-mana 2/2, she appears to represent the thematic identity of Commissars in general. Leading from the front, she causes each opponent to lose life equal to the number of attacking creatures, a payoff for a go wide strategy, and swarming massive infantry. Very Astra Militarum. She can, of course, in the name of the Imperium, pay 2 mana, sacrifice a troop, and gain 2 life and draw a card, giving her a card advantage engine as well as an aggressive ability on the same card, which makes her an absolutely solid black-white soldier commander. Next up is Archmagus Dominus himself, the 10,000-year-old ruling tech priest of Mars. It's Belisarius Cawl. He leads the forces of the Adeptus Mechanicum, or at least is a figurehead for the Mars contingency, and is responsible for some of the huge leaps forward in technology seen in the last century or so within the canon. A 4-mana 2/4 legendary artifact human with 2 abilities. He can tap himself and 2 untapped artifacts to create a 2/2 white Astartes warrior token with vigilance, basically creating a Primaris Marine because he has improved upon the God Emperor's design. He can also dig for technology by tapping and tapping X untapped creatures you control. Look at the top X cards of your library and reveal an artifact from among them, put it into your hand, which just shows the Admech's obsession with finding technology to the point that they would deploy the Imperium's forces to get it. It's great to see Cawl here as he's a fan favourite, but I feel like his abilities are a little bit weak for such a powerful character within the game. I don't know how many people will actually end up building Cawl because his abilities are kinda meh. Next up we have Inquisitor Eisenhorn, a 4-mana 2/3 that allows you to reveal the first card you draw each turn. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you get to make a Charubale, I don't know how you're meant to pronounce it because I haven't listened to the audiobooks, an enslaved demon trapped with the body of a human, a demon host. Eisenhorn also investigates equal to the combat damage he deals to a player, representing his deep investigation into heresy. I kind of wish he also investigated the damage dealt by the demon as well, but what can you do? Eisenhorn is a great include here, a very, very popular 40k character, again from novels more so than the games, with a supposedly great book series I haven't actually read myself. He is the main character of the coming live-action TV series if that ever happened. I do wonder wonder though which will actually arrive first, the Magic the Gathering TV show or the 40k one. A deeper cut now with Nayam Shai Murad. I had to look up this one. She's actually a named rogue trader, which you can tell from the way she looks and the fact she's a rogue, but she's the character from the Blackstone Fortress boxed game. Originally when 40k was conceived, it was more of a tabletop RPG inspired wargame than it is today, originally called Rogue Trader. This makes reference to the rogue traders, who are people from elite imperial dynastic traditions that are warranted by the actual law of the land, or the law of the universe, I should say, to be able to traverse the galaxy without being impeded by, you know, inquisitorial forces and similar. They can go where they please in order to trade and get technology and further the Imperium itself. This means they can interact with Xenos and similar, and would usually be outlawed by the Imperial mandate as long as their trading and exploration, like I said, is for the greater good of the Imperium. Nayam is seen descending into the Blackstone Fortress itself here, a space dungeon of sorts in the dungeon crawling game Black Fortress. When she deals damage to a player, she allows the defending player to return a target permanent from graveyard to hand, and if she does, that player chooses a permanent in your graveyard and puts it onto the battlefield. A political allegiance and political commander that benefits both parties, but perhaps the rogue trader themselves gets benefit a little bit more. Slam dunk of theme and flavour. There is one more legendary in the deck, perhaps the most hotly anticipated. One that the Imperial fanboys have been clamouring for. Something we don't even have a model for or rules for in the tabletop game yet. That's right, this is like an exclusive almost. It's the God Emperor of Mankind himself. At least, well, it's his 90% dead corpse propped upon the Golden Throne of Terror. A 4-mana artifact that says if you would lose the game, instead exile the throne and get your life total to 1. A powerful effect alongside ad nauseum and similar effects perhaps. It also allows you to sacrifice a creature and add 3 mana of any colour to your mana pool, in any combination. It's a very powerful effect. When the Emperor was fatally wounded during the Horus Heresy by Horus, he was interned upon the Golden Throne, as shown here in some absolutely iconic 3rd edition art from John Blanche. This is literally my childhood. The Emperor sits on the throne and uses it to project his psychic abilities across the universe, guiding safe passage for ships and granting miracles to the faithful. But how much of that is the Emperor and how much of it is the rest of the tech involved and the belief in him is up for debate. But in order to keep it going, 1,000 psychers a day are brought to him and sacrificed, generating the resources to keep him and the Astronomicon beacon alive. I'm absolutely stunned that we got a Golden Throne, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic mechanical representation of what you'd expect the Golden Throne to do. I'm actually a little bit flawed. I'm being so positive about this, I know, but this is real good. Before we dive into the rest of the new cards though, let's slam through those reprints. One more legendary creature in the reprints, kinda. Everyone expected Guilliman, the only living and active loyal Primarch, the super soldier from which the Astartes were modelled. Instead of a creature though, we see him leading the Ultramarines in collective effort. We also see an Inquisitor and Call in the art too, making me think this might have been a snapshot in time from the fall of Cadia during the Gathering Storm, or perhaps the defense of Earth after Cicatrix Maledictum put demons on the moon. I'm not sure, but Warhammer is wild. A really cool include, I actually really like the card for a tokens deck, and I think it's a good place to put another named character. I'm just shocked that Guilliman got the secondary on a spell like slot and Marnius got the main lead, but I guess he does have a comic book series currently. Bastion Protector is the only creature reprint across all 4 decks and shows us an Inquisitorial Bodyguard, which fits rather well with the Greyfax Commander. Then we start diving deeper and deeper into the token theme, with Deploy to the front showing Deathcore of Krieg deploying into a swamp, and Commissar Yorick is name dropped in the flavor text. The Deathcore of Krieg token goes very nicely with the spell, and I'm actually shocked that we got more than one reference to the Deathcore in this deck. I love it. Entrapment Maneuver shows a Hive Tyrant being pincered by the Catachan Jungle Fighters of the Militarum, stand-in for the 80s action Rambo archetype, and we get a Catachan token to go with it. I told you, the tokens in this deck are fire. Fel the Mighty is another token sub-theme payoff, shows a Canoness, a Sisters of Battle leader, using a Blazing Brazier as a weapon. Iconic Blood Angels vs Tyranids art here with Hour of Reckoning, and we get to see some childhood favourites of mine, Death Company Dreadnought in the back, and a Terminator Captain as well, all on a card where some of the creatures might die in order to win the war, a very Death Company approach to warfare. Launch the Fleet is not the most exciting of reprints, but it gives us more soldiers, and with a theme and flavour around the movement of the Imperial Navy and moving from planet to planet, so it's a thematic slam dunk, even if the card's not exciting. Martial Coup is another explosive mouth that makes tokens as well, only this time we get Cadians, a 3rd regiment of the Militarum on our tokens. Yeah, what can I say? It's awesome. My absolute favourite reprint in the deck is Swords to Plowshares, where they evoke the battlefield to farmhand flavour by showing a decommissioned A decommissioned Lehman Russ, the iconic workhorse of the Imperial Army, retrofitted to serve as a tractor on an agri-world. The flavour text as well to make the Imperium's attitude towards feeding its people sound as dogmatic and as oppressive as anything else they do. Like A+++, no notes, phenomenal reprint. Reconnaissance mission turns your tokens into card draw and shows Space Marine scouts of the Raven Guard scouting ahead for Necron forces. Mortify gives us our first Grey Knight as Kaldor Drago destroys an enemy bloodletter with his blade. Utter End depicts a Chaos Knight with a molten hole through its chest as an Adeptus Mechanicus aircraft disappears overhead into the clouds. The art direction on this product is so good. Arcane Signet gets a unique Imperial flavoured art in the form of a staff of a Militarum Psyker. Commander Sphere shows us a tech priest, probably of Mars from the look of his cloak, looking over the strategic information of a hololith map aboard the bridge of a ship. Everflowing Chalice gets a Blood Angels themed blood chalice that they use for pre-battle rituals to invoke the rage and the fury of their troops. The flavour is a little bit off there, it's a mana rock, but honestly, I can let it slide when it comes to mana rocks because they're quite difficult to nail down. Mind Stone, on that note, comes the flavour and theme of the Order of the Valorous Heart as a relic. You see these relics dotted around the models and the art of the Sisters of Battle quite a lot anyway. The Valorous Heart are a sub-faction of the Sisters of Battle. It's actually wonderful to see different regiments, orders and chapters of these larger factions show up. Deep cuts, if you will. Really embracing that this is the whole Imperium approach. The most powerful reprint so far, though, is Skull Clamp. It's a powerful card draw engine for any token deck, and here we see it represented by a Servo Skull, which is essentially an automation and computing tool within the Imperium where AI is outlawed and banned. So they must use the brains and the bodies of loyal servants of the Emperor, or sometimes criminals, as tools. Appropriate for how this thing is going to churn up soldiers for card advantage. It's probably my second favourite flavour reprint after Plowshares. Soul Ring is in here, but we make it grim dark. And lastly, we get 3 talisman, all of which showing off Militarum regiments, the Catachan, the Vostroyan, and the Cadians. Again, that's a 4th regiment added with the Vostroyan. Talisman of Progress is a good reprint here because it was over $13 prior to this. And now some more juicy new cards, and there's a lot of them. The Triumph of St. Catherine is a 5 mana 5/5. It has lifelink, and when it dies, well, you shuffle it back into the top number of cards in your library, and it has Miracle too. Miracle is of note here because it's a mechanic that is unique to the Sisters of Battle in this deck, but it's a mechanic we've seen in Magic previously. And Miracle works wonders. The sororitas are the female-only foot soldiers of the ecclesiarchy of the church, and some bureaucratic response to an old civil war where people said no man may bear arms for the church anymore, so they took that literally and decided to train women as nuns with guns. The nuns are so devout that they can enact literal miracles in the battlefield. Miracle is a great mechanic for them. I am shocked the Triumph isn't legendary really, but ultimately I'm a little underwhelmed with the card's abilities. It's cool that the funeral procession of holy relics made it into the deck, I guess. It's a cool reference. But and it comes back, it gets resurrected, I guess, and new martyrs come to the cause. Yeah, sure, but the model is so impressive and it has so many rules on the tabletop. I kind of expected this card to do a bit more. It's a little underwhelming. There's an important point to make at this juncture, by the way. There's been a very specific effort to make theme and flavour match the lore and canon, more so than the current 40 game mechanics. The mechanics of the Magic the Gathering cards themselves represent the stories of 40k, more so than the rules on the tabletop. And this is because, well, it's the right approach, because editions change, mechanical identities within Warhammer change, and rules change. But the lore is significantly more consistent. Even if there's retcons, it's more consistent than the 40k rules will ever be. Defenders of Humanity is a 3 mana enchantment with additional X in its cost, where ETBs and creates that many Astartes. Then you can activate it later on, exiling it, and do it again, but only if you control no creatures, showing the Imperium's ability to throw numbers at a problem, even with Space Marines, and even when it's going badly. For the Emperor shows the fervour of its priests and its fanatics as they charge the enemy. A very white Overrun style effect, but lacking the actual evasion of Overrun. It's a reasonable card. The lifelink alone will probably keep you in a game for longer and allow you to swing out with Wild Abandon. Grey Knight Paragon is a 4/4 for 5 mana. It's a knight and it has flash. It's new design space for white for a lot of this. You can see a little bit in this set. When it enters, it's destroy target attacking creature. If that creature were a demon, exile it instead, because Grey Knights really hate demons. They're the demon hunting super secretive special branch cousins of the Astartes. We could be killed for even talking about them. We get some Firstborn Dark Angel Devastators, a 4 mana 3/3 that ETBs and blows up an artifact or an enchantment, and it has Squad. The defining mechanic of, I was going to say the Astartes, but there are 2 different things that are non-Astartes that get it as well. But you can make copies of this creature for a discount when you cast it. Got 8 mana? Well, why not make 3 Devastators instead of 1 and blow up 3 things? This of course plays well into the token mechanic of the deck, and it generally is a very, very strong effect. It also helps to shore up some thematic inconsistencies. You see, Marines are meant to work in squads, and whilst one Space Marine is still a powerful transhuman super soldier, they work better in a group. Thus, one Marine might struggle to fight and kill a bear and survive, but a squad fares better. Well, kinda, I guess one of them still dies. I'm going to do a whole video on that later. The Devastators are the heavy weapon squads of the Firstborn Marines. The Dark Age chapter itself, in the dark green armour here, are known for their use of Dark Age technology, especially plasma, which we see on the Marine in the back. I kind of wish the Grav Cannon was in the back and the Marine was in the front to really get that deep cut to their plasma weapon usage, but it's a minor gripe. Space Marine Scout of the Imperial Fists, the chapter that failed to protect the Emperor on the Bridge of the Vengeful Spirit, and yes, that is a shot fired. The Scout is a 2-1 with First Strike and Vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, if a player has more lands than you can search for planes. Not basic planes, just planes. You can get dual lands of this and put it into play tapped. It's a mechanic we've seen in White before, and we've seen more and more over the last few years. I kind of wish the squad mechanic was on this, because that kind of would have made sense, but maybe that'd be counterintuitive, as the second and the third scout might not get lands if it catches you up, so yeah. Thunderwolf Cavalry, a 5-mana 4/4 with First Strike, and when it deals combat damage to a player, put a counter on each other creature you control. It's a Space Wolf, an elite member of their chapter, given relics like Thunderhammers, and put on top of a Cyborg Super Wolf to go into battle. The buff in the whole team thing is a little strange. It'd make more sense if it wasn't a Thunderwolf Cavalry and more one of their Wolf Lords on Wolf Cavalry or whatever, if it's a leader unit. So mechanically or flavor-wise, I don't really understand why an elite knight on Wolf would buff your whole team, barring inspiring them, but any Marine can inspire a Marine, I guess. The Space Marines are said to be fearless, and I quote, "They shall know no fear." In this case, we see this inspiration on an instant speed. Power buff that lends indestructibility, but only to one creature type that you choose. This could be inspiration to your soldiers from the Marines, or it could be the faultless resolve of the Marines. Please note, it appears to be Iron Hands in the art, an apothecary perhaps, carrying a power sword and a shield, which is a weird war gear choice. Does anyone know what's going on in this art? Our next squad card is a favourite of mine, a 4-mana 2/2 with squad that gives other creatures you control +1/+1, allowing you to get multiple anthems in a can. These are the bodyguards of Marneus and any other important battlefield role within the first company of the Ultramarines. Our first and only Custodes here, the Vexillus Praetor. The Custodes are the super soldiers, a precursor to the Astartes, a far more powerful canonically in almost every single way except for their numbers. They are known for their ability to hunt, as well as to protect their liege. They are bodyguards by trade too. In this case, we have a flash 3/3 with vigilance, and commanders you control have protection from everything. Interestingly, because canonically, and in spite of this, the Emperor still got killed by Horus. So that brings up the interesting question of what does Horus look like as a magic card if he can get through this bad boy. Ultimately, having the Vexillus, which is a computer terminal / shield device / standard bearer as the only custodian card, is a little bit strange, but I guess it's the most likely to look like a bodyguard and feel like a bodyguard in the art, so that might be why it was chosen to associate with this. I would love to see some Alaris, some Virtus Praetors or Trajan, maybe next time. The Zephyrim or the Jump Pack, highly mobile assault troops of the Sororitas, in this case a 4-mana 3/3 Vigilant Flyer with a miracle cost of 2 and a squad cost. In many ways, the angelic visage of the Zephyrim here is evocative of Entreat the Angels, an iconic angel wingcom with miracle as well that made bodies with flying. In this case, when you miracle these girls, you can create a squad of 3, for example, for just 6 mana, which is 3 bodies and 9 power for 6 mana. With vigilance and flying. This might be my favourite squad card the more I think about it. Or is it the Devastators? Or maybe it's the Sikaran Infiltrators. A flash 1/2 for 3 mana that ETBs and draws a card, but has squad, which means you can make a bunch of these in someone's end step before you untap, and you get some card draw on the go, which is a representation of what the recon scouts of the Mechanicum would be doing. Sisters of Silence are the second half of the Talons of the Emperor. They work strongly and closely alongside the Custodes. These are null maidens, blank spaces in the warp that demons and psychers are disrupted by. In the case of a 5-mana 3/3 flash human knight that has a stifle or a negate attached to its enter the battlefield effect, representing its ability to counter magical spells and abilities, but not creatures or technology, which is a really good flavour win. I would have liked to see this have some amount of ward or hexproof to show it deflecting spells. It's a bit weird if someone can just cast a lightning bolt and it can kill a a magically immune or psychically immune Sister of Silence. Vanguard Suppressors were spoiled early, and honestly, they are one of my least favourite cards in the deck, and I wonder why they were super early spoiled, honestly. The art has been accused of being too bright, and the flavour feels forced that suppressing fire shouldn't just draw you cards. Power level wise, they're fine, and making a load of them and attacking someone and drawing cards is going to be good, but ultimately I don't really know why this was the thing they showed off the set with, because it's kind of underwhelming. Archloflagellants are criminals stripped of their autonomy and weaponized through drugs and technological enhancements. It's very grim. They have the squad mechanic and can't be blocked, and they can be made indestructible for the low cost of just 3 life. I like the feel of how aggressive these are as shock troops and how helpless it might be to have a load of them running at you, but I find it a little underwhelming in Commander, where a 3-1 unblockable doesn't really do a whole lot. I can imagine them being very fun in Cube though, for example. Primaris Eliminators are the Primaris Space Marine Snipers. They carry multiple different ammunition types. This makes them a 5-mana 3-2 that can destroy a creature on ETB or disrupt enemy lines by giving all creatures target player controls -2/-2 until the end of turn. This makes them versatile like the Eliminators and their options in the tabletop game, which I really like. The effect is evidently mono black, and I actually quite like that snipers might be like thematically within Black's colour pie as well, because a sniper is basically an assassin. Also, this is a salamander. A sanguinary priest is a leader within the Blood Angels who functions as an apothecary. They heal the injured and the sick and retrieve the gene seed from their fallen brethren. Uniquely within the Blood Angels though, they are tasked with rituals that incite rage and make their forces better in combat by kind of frothing them up a little bit. They caught what's called the Red Thirst, a deep-seated secret within the Blood Angels that they all get a bit too angry, but they have to be careful not to go down that slippery slope into the Black Rage, a blinding rage that you don't come back from. You are used as a weapon and then executed if you go that far. So the black colour identity, well, I love it. It's a 2/4 for 4 mana that has lifelink and allows you to shoot any target for 1 when a creature dies. It's a super powerful effect that evokes the idea that they're using the death of their comrades as a weapon, but it's like a really powerful blood artist. I do think its flavor text is off though. It talks about not succumbing too harshly to the Red Thirst, but in reality it's the Black Rage that you need to be careful of. It's a little bit off. I think Assault Intercessor is one of my favourite cards in the deck as well in terms of like a cube card. It's frontline melee troop that has First Strike and Menace. It's a 3/2 for 3 that when a creature an opponent controls dies, they lose 2 life. It's an incredibly aggressive and a well-statted 3-drop. My only complaint is that it's an ultramarine in the art. We could have had a Space Wolf or a Blood Angel, or if you want to go deeper into non-firstborn chapters, or non-first founding, should I say, we could have a Flesh Terror or a Lamenter. Besides that, it's a really sweet design. I can't wait to play this in Cube. Birth of the Imperium is a saga that shows the Emperor's unification of the scattered remnants of mankind and the deployment of the Astartes project on the Great Crusade. The Unification Wars and the Crusade were bloody affairs. This is a 5-mana saga. Its first chapter shows us the first part where he deploys his Space Marines onto Earth and onto the Crusade in force, 1 for each opponent you have. Chapter 2, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So this is just the wanton destruction of the Imperium. Chapter 3 is draw 2 cards for each opponent. That's fewer creatures than you. Woof! The value you get from this saga is insane off the first 2 pips, but the ceiling on the 3rd pip is massive. Potentially drawing 6 cards is wild. Of course, if you're behind, the 3rd chapter is a little meh, but honestly, I think this hits a really sweet spot of being powerful, it's fun to resolve, and it's threatening, but it's not just broken. The Calidus Assassin is a shapeshifter known for being behind enemy lines and blending into the populace before killing their mark. A flash 3/3 for 6 that can ETB tapped as a copy of any creature, and then you can choose to destroy that creature as well. It's dripping with flavour. The assassins within the Imperium are part of the Order Assassinorum, I think it's called. It's a separate order from all the other military arms, and then you can request to utilize assassins within your forces. They function in all the armies, essentially. The company commander is a fun militarum leader. It ends the battlefield and makes a 1/1 for each opponent you control. Then when it attacks, creatures you control gain Death Strike, which is a great way to allow you to trade up with your little soldiers. I'm not quite sold on the fact that a commander telling its troops to bring it down would allow 1 single Acadian to kill Abaddon in single combat. So that's a little bit of a miss, but it's a cool card nonetheless. And then Cybernetic Datasmith is one of my favourite cards that I just don't really understand. It's a tech priest who oversees the deployment of the Castellan robots, which are these cool sci-fi droids I don't think they've got AI because that's not allowed in the Imperium, but they're cool science fiction robots. It's a 3-mana artifact creature itself that has protection from robots and is a 0/1, has blue and tap, target player draws a card, and then another target player creates a 4/4 robot artifact creature token with this card block. So the creature itself has protection to be able to block those robots down the line. It's a cool political tool where you can give one person a card and one person a creature. You can take the card, give someone a creature, give someone else the card, you get the creature. There's a lot of modes to this card. It's fun. I just don't really understand the flavour of it giving stuff away. I'm probably missing something because my admech knowledge isn't up to scratch. Deny the Witch, a turn of phrase for fighting against a rogue or enemy psychers. It's literally the name of the ability within the game to counter psychic spells in 40k. So a 4-mana counter spell that can also hit abilities and of triggered and activated, and then it causes you to lose life equal to the number of creatures you control. Solid upgrade to this kind of deck. I love versatile removal interaction spells, so being able to counter the ETB ability of a Crater Hoof, for example, that has been made uncountable with a Cavern of Souls, is hot. Wonderful flavour, strong and powerful effect. I think this would see a lot more play if it was perhaps just Esper, like 3 mana as opposed to 4, but I mean, I'm glad they're not just printing super staples at every opportunity. Librarians are the spellcasters of the Space Marines, they're psychic console, they're the wizards if you will, and they give you a spell for free apparently when it attacks as long as the spell is cast from hand and is cheaper than the number of attacking creatures you control. A really cool wizarding payoff for going wide. Flesh's Week shows the Iron Hands improving their bodies through cybernetic augmentation, putting counters on all of your creatures and turning them into artifacts and giving them, well, +1/+1 counters. All other non-artifact creatures in play, including your opponents, do get -1/-1 though, and this isn't an enchantment. It's a very cool card. Something that can be devastating for some opponents, I guess, but my biggest gripe with it is that you don't want to deploy any more soldiers after you've cast this. Once this is in play, you don't want to make any Cadians or Deathcore or Kree. They're just going to die, and that seems kind of like a non-bow to me. Our second Imperial Fist is a Primaris Chaplain, a 4-mana 3/3 that is indestructible when it attacks and has Battle Cry to buff other attacking creatures. It's leading from the front with a shout and a war cry and a hymn. They're basically like the war priests of the Space Marines. A fun and flavorful way for it to lead by example without getting cut down immediately. One of my favourite cards in the entire deck is the Sister Hospitaller. I kind of wish I had a miracle cost, even if it just reduced it by 1, but whatever. It's a 6-mana 3/2. And then when it enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and you gain life equal to its mana value. So it's basically an elaborate karmic guide that gains you some life, doesn't have the evasion or protection, but also doesn't just die next turn. Firstly, I love the Hospitalia model on the tabletop, and I've played that unit a lot. It's the Sisters Medic unit, and it's been a big part of my competitive armies. Secondly, I'm going to flicker this and just, oh, it's going to be glorious. But lastly, look at this gorgeous art though, like a Renaissance painting or something. My art theory is not all there, so maybe it's not Renaissance, but it's just her reading that poor sister her final bedtime Imperial Dogma. Sadly, this is being an existing piece of Games Workshop art that we saw in the 8th edition Codex for the Sisters of Battle, means that we don't get an artist credit. We just get Games Workshop around the card. I really hope that Wizards, when working with Games Workshop or other companies in the future, can avoid that, though. I think crediting your artists is important. The Repentia are sisters that have sinned or fallen from grace. They're stripped of their armor, and they must then head into battle with nothing but their faith and an extra big chainsword, and prove their right to earn that armor back. A 5-mana 5/1 that has a miracle cost of 2, and when it dies you gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. Literal representation of the benefits to the Imperium of their martyrdom. Grim. Another solid unpowered cube card here, I think. Inquisitor Rosette is a 2-mana equipment that equips for 3, and when the equipped creature attacks, you make an attacking Astartes warrior with vigilance. And, if that wasn't enough, all creatures you control that are attacking gain menace. It helps to get all your soldiers through in this deck, and I just think it'd be a really cool 1v1 card again. I think some of this stuff definitely make it into my cube. We get our first Imperial Knight, which is a vehicle. The Chaos one wasn't, weirdly. Knights are massive mechs that tower above the battlefield like siege engines. A 5-mana 6/6 with trample. They're ETBs and shoots everyone for 4. It also has a lowly crew cost of 1 that shows just how a powerful weapon like this can be piloted by any human who knows how. Yeah, another card I think would again be better in a 1v1 environment like Cube, but feels ultimately underwhelming, besides being a summoning sick token enabler in Commander. We then step up the chain one more, beyond the Knights into Titan territory. These things are approximately twice the size of a Knight. A 7-mana 10/10, protection from mana value 3 or lower thanks to its shields, and whenever it attacks, deal 5 damage to each opponent, and crew 4. A wildly big threat that I could see perhaps doing something fancy in Legacy with Goblin Engineer. Perhaps not as good as a card that's coming up though. If it had a reliable way to crew it in that deck, I guess. The powerful protection ability is why I'm saying this. I think it having protection from a lot of the removal spells you'd fire at air parades and plowshares and stuff is good. It just feels like it's a cool little Titan, and I'm excited to see when we return to Warhammer in the future, if we do, what a Warlord or a larger Titan looks like. The Redemptor Dreadnought is a bipedal battle tank that is piloted by a near-dead Space Marine, a way to keep the skills, talents, and experience of wounded Marines alive on the battlefield, represented by the need to exile a creature from the graveyard when you cast this. It then has trample, and when it attacks, it's more power based on the power of the creature you exiled. It's quite a cool bit of flavour and theme, but I'm actually mildly disappointed because, well, the Redemptor is one of my favourite models of all time. I don't think the mechanical power of the card is playable outside of maybe Precon level Commander, so it's a shame that I don't feel the urge to play with Redemptors elsewhere. Also, please note, it's a Blood Angel. Another iconic bit of the arsenal here, a Thunderhawk gunship, the most expensive tabletop model available for the Space Marines at present time. When it enters the battlefield, it brings with it 2 Space Marines, dropping them off out of the storage compartment underneath. And when it attacks, attacking creatures you control gain flying. This thing both deploys troops to the battlefield and then takes them into the front lines via its transport capacity as well. An absolute flavour win, and with a crew cost of 2 as well, it's pretty solid. This might be the engineer card for Legacy, because you make it and then you crew it with the 2/2s and you're loving life. And then we save the most ludicrous for last. A 7-mana Wrath, where non-land permanents your opponents control lose indestructible until end of turn and destroy all non-land permanents. 7 mana is a lot. There are 6 mana Wraths out there. Hell, there's Farewell, right? That exiles things. But when it makes it impossible for your opponent to heroic intervention through this, I like it a lot. It's a great way to show the most powerful command an Inquisitor can give. The total and utter eradication of an entire planet. Well, thank you for watching the entirety of this video if you got this far. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comment section below, and let me know if you missed something, or I missed something, should I say, or what you're excited about. Are you buying this deck? Is there a card that you think I undervalued a little bit here as well? And if you're looking for more content like this, there's plenty of it in the links down below and in the cards. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.